It's nice to have you here. Today is our Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness meeting, so we'll be relaxing and experiencing health, wealth, and happiness. I hope that doesn't come as a surprise to you. That's what we'll be doing. It is in the name. Maybe you're not sure how to do that, or maybe you don't believe in it, but that's the idea. And so I had an experience that I won't go into detail on, but it has helped me to, well, it was somewhat disturbing, a disturbing experience, and disturbing in the sense that it was unsettling. And so this was this has been provocative, has uh, caused me to question and look at what it is that I'm wanting in what do I want? What am I? What is my aim? What is my um, purpose? And in particular, with regard to these meetings. So I had this realization through this experience that was somewhat like a rude awakening. A rude awakening. I suppose live somewhat of a sheltered life, and I catch glimpses, of course, because I do have some socialization. um, as to what's happening in the world, and but I tend to not think about it very much. Um, but I have seen that part of this rude awakening, this disturbing experience, was this realization that much of the world is focused on more information for salvation. And um, so the reason that this relates to this meeting is that um, I have a desire to communicate or share something or extend an invitation to something that I perceive as valuable. And I want to interface with others in order to do that, obviously. And so I saw that this idea that more information is equals well can lead to salvation is a mistaken one. And what I mean by that is that I just noticed that there's this and I'm saying all this as an invitation for you to just check it out. See that there's a, a trend toward this idea that more information will provide you with salvation. So if you were to look, uh, it's not an entirely new trend, but it's I think accelerated in recent years. And so I've done a bit of study of the so-called art of copywriting, which is to say advertising of information. So if somebody has something that they want to uh, be able to communicate, and there's a certain way of communicating that is thought to be able to get through to people. And This is the modern version of this is largely built on the ideas of Freud, um, that were used in this way by his nephew Edward Bernays in the United States, and really shaped modern public relations and copywriting. And so there's a way of communicating that's called copywriting or advertising, called marketing by many different names, but um, that's thought to be effective in persuading and getting people's attention. So getting people's attention is a big part of it. You have to obviously get somebody's attention before you can communicate with them, and then you have to keep their attention. And so I've just noticed that uh, every single article and every single video is practically screaming. The headlines and the subjects of emails and everything, they're just practically screaming. Um, this is the thing that will help you. This is the thing that will save you. You can't do without this. You need it. And there's too much to be able to take in all of it. And so I think it promotes a sense of unease and anxiety, and it increases the sense that I need to move faster. I need to do more. I need to understand more. I need to take it in. I need to read more things and take more classes and more workshops and attend more things so that I can get all of the information that will eventually, if I can add it all up, lead to my salvation. So I thought, well, that's not right. It's not true. So it's caused me to really consider what it is that I want to do with these meetings. What is it that I am? How can I achieve what I'm wanting to achieve? So so I realized that I don't want to fall into that trap of leading people into believing that they need more information for salvation. So I want to try and, in some sense, move in a different direction. Simplification, less, slower. I mean, not this isn't entirely new in terms of what I've been doing and communicating, but it's a clarification that I want to be more clear and have clear conscious intention to express less, more clearly, more slowly, um, rather than leading people on to think that more is necessary, because we don't need more, we need less. We need to reduce, we need to simplify, we need to pare it down to what's essential. So in that spirit, I'd like to, my intention for today is to communicate what I believe is an essential, valuable message that will be helpful to you uh, in your life, so that you don't have to wait around for more before you can uh, experience or know what it is that you're truly wanting. Instead, to reduce the unnecessary so that you can access with greater clarity what it is that's already true. Your salvation is already fulfilled. You don't need to wait for it. You just need to accept it. You just need to see it and accept it. So what I'd like to explore today I'd like to explore desire and the value of desire and how you can more efficiently or most efficiently work with desire in a good way in order to realize what it is that you desire so that you can experience that um, fulfillment, the the fulfillment of your purpose, to live on purpose, to experience yourself in wholeness. So that's the topic that I'd like to explore. Um, so first of all, desire. Sometimes desire has been um, given a bad name, and um, so the first thing is that I'd like to clarify that desire. I don't see that desire as negative. In fact, I see that desire um, is an expression of uh, it's a divine expression. It's an expression of truth and wholeness that is um, like a guidance system. And so um, working with desire is very intelligent and helpful. If we shun desire, then we make things harder for ourselves. Now, that does not mean that um, blind hedonism is necessarily wise. So there's a possibility of a certain kind of um, relationship with desire that can be negative, can have negative consequences, maybe in no small part because of the kind of copywriting and marketing that I was referring to earlier. Because um, there are, let's say, forces that are working against your authentic desire and that are trying to inject inauthentic desires, trying to feed off of you, basically. And so we need to be conscious of how we work with desire rather than just blindly following all desires as they appear, because not all desires are your desires. But the desires that are your desires uh, are emanating from the self, and their source is the self, and they lead to the self. So they are, that's why I say that they're divine. So to actually be consciously um, giving yourself to your desires or aligning yourself with your authentic desires is a spiritual practice that leads to true fulfillment, because it leads you to self realization, to actually express and know yourself, to experience yourself in wholeness and integrity, so that there's no um, misalignment between who you know yourself to be most intimately and who you are expressed. So I guess I could say that what I'm getting at here is that the in the purpose of your life is to be yourself. And of course, you can't, in some ways, you can't be other than yourself. At the heart of it, you're always yourself. But that the purpose of your life, because this life is in motion, this is a life of contrast and movement. So this the whole of yourself exists as this full spectrum of existence, from your innermost self, which is, we could say, maybe unchanging, to your outermost self, which is ever changing, and for there to be an integrity and a continuity and a wholeness throughout, that I would say is the purpose of your life. And so your authentic desires are integral to that process of self-expression, self-realization, to know yourself in all ways, through at all levels of yourself, all levels of your existence. And so so first of all, I'm just going to repeat: desire is good. Desire is not bad. Desire is not the devil, although there are certain ways in which inauthentic desires can be used to lure you away from yourself, so that you're not acting in integrity, you're not fulfilling your purpose. Instead, you're being um, manipulated in order to fill some other purpose. So we want to be clear about our true purpose, or our true desire. But when we are acting in congruence with our true desire, when we are giving ourselves to our true desire, then this is a spiritually correct act. So that's the first thing. Then maybe we might wonder, well, how could that be? And what I'm proposing is that our purpose is to be ourselves at all levels of our existence. So, of course, as I've already said, we already are ourselves at the most fundamental level. That's a given. But we're not satisfied with that. We want to know ourselves completely at all levels. So there's this dynamic process of life occurring, and we want to know ourselves expressed at all levels. And so these desires are of the self. The authentic desires are of the self, and if we reject them or deny them, then we're not living our purpose. Then we're sort of deadening ourselves. And so there's two things that can happen, and they often happen together. One is a denial of our authentic desires, and the other is an indulgence of our inauthentic desires. So the indulgence of our inauthentic desires is when we're looking outside of ourselves for what we want. And this is pretty commonplace, actually. If you just observe, you'll see that who you are is unique. There's no other you. And so your authentic desires are unique. Now, of course, at the core, we could say that everybody's desire is love, security, joy. We could say that that's true, but how that is expressed is going to be unique. How that is known individually is unique to each individual. And so if you're looking to somebody else to tell you how that should be, then you're obviously looking in the wrong place, because there's something within you that tells you the truth. But if you're looking outside of yourself, you say, I'm bored, or I don't like the way I'm feeling. Well, let me look out there for somebody else to tell me what I need, what I'm looking for. Then that's you're looking somewhere else other than to the where you should be looking, because the authentic desires are the desires of the self. They're not, you can't actually fulfill a desire that's not authentic. So so oftentimes people are manipulated into looking outside of themselves to look somewhere else for their desires. A lot of that manipulation is completely unconscious and not with malicious intent. I've talked about this before. A lot of the time, the desires are borrowed from others, from parents and teachers and siblings and children and spouses and so forth and so on. And again, usually not with malicious intent. The mother is not usually consciously, maliciously trying to harm their child by offloading some desires, but it happens. So that's one way in which it happens, but it also happens clearly with if not outright malicious intent, there's certainly an unwholesome intent when uh, there's, you told that you need a, widescreen television, or that you need a air conditioner, or that you need, to on YouTube, I get these advertisements for I should apparently they don't know I'm married, or maybe they do know I'm married, but they get advertisements for these meet Ukrainian women. I mean, holy cow. What a if that's not evil, I don't know what is. I mean, on so many levels. But that kind of thing, it's all there's so much of it that we almost don't recognize what it really is. But there's a whole kind of machine for generating false desires that just feed off of you, and it doesn't really benefit anybody. Those machines are, well, you know what they are? They're artificial intelligence. It's an entity out there. And that entity is fed by everybody buying into these false desires. But the real tragedy of it is that that entity can never be satiated. It's like in the Ramayana. I mean, that entity is Ravana of the Ramayana. So there are all these Ravanas out there, and just like Ravana, they can never be satiated. They keep taking, 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 and they'll never be satiated. Never, because they don't have the ability to experience satiation, because the satiation requires the fulfillment of an authentic desire, and all the authentic desires emanate from the self and resolve in the self. Um, so getting clear on what's yours and what's not yours, pretty fundamentally important. Now, that might sound like a lot of maybe overwhelming. How do I know what's mine and what's not mine? Well, I would say the good news is that there's built in to this whole thing is a, a way, there's a guidance system. I mean, I said the desires are a kind of guidance system, but there's another kind of guidance system that if you just trust in it and play along with it, it's fail safe. It will work for you. And so let's see if I can explain how that works. It's not that complicated. All of what I'm actually saying is maybe should be common sense. It shouldn't be a big surprise. Should kind of all land with you in a way that you just say, oh yeah, that's sort of obvious. Shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be shocking or anything like that. Should have a sense of naturalness to it. But it's very if you just accept it and start to let yourself pare down all of the other complications and just sit with or be with or live with, move with, breathe with the naturalness and simplicity of what it is that I'm trying to express, then maybe you'll start to see what it is that I'm describing. So you have desires, and they're authentic desires that emanate from the self. And when you work with them intelligently, they express the self. So there's a self-realization. It's a meaning that the self is expressed at all levels of reality. And so there's a sense of completeness, wholeness that is experienced because this, you're filling yourself out. This is what you want. You want to have that sense of integrity and congruence at all levels. So when you have desires, you want to differentiate between the desires that are yours and the desires that are not yours, or the desires that are authentically, authentic and those that are inauthentic, or the true desires and the false desires. In other words, the desires that emanate from the self and those that emanate from some sort of soulless entity. And as I've said, maybe that sounds scary or overwhelming, like, oh no, what if I do the wrong thing? Then am I gonna go to hell? Am I gonna suffer forever? No, actually, if you're just working with this just like a child, then you'll see that there is this fail-safe guidance system in it. So when you are slowing down and you are not overthinking, just feeling and being more than thinking, then you'll notice that you start to feel better when you're aligning yourself with your authentic desires, and you feel worse when you align yourself with your inauthentic desires. It's kind of simple. I guess the only trick here is that you really have to be willing to slow down enough, because if you're sped up, which is how we're kept in this trance of all of the false stuff, then we can't clearly differentiate between actually feeling good or feeling worse, and we'll actually mistake them, because if we're sped up and we're just living off of momentum, then we mistake feeling good for anything that just maintains the momentum. And we'll mistake anything that interrupts or interferes with that momentum as feeling bad. But if the momentum is taking us in the indulgence of an inauthentic desire, then guess what? More of that is actually harmful, but we're mistaking that as feeling good. And less of that is actually helpful, but we mistake that as feeling bad. But we can resolve all of this if we just slow down. So you could just be aware of your breath, be aware of your felt sense of yourself. Just notice if it's all sped up and tense, or if you can just let it slow down. And even if initially that slowing down seems to feel uncomfortable and you might want to judge it in a negative way and say this is bad, just remember, keep slowing down. Slowing down will be helpful. It will orient you so that you can naturally recognize your authentic desires versus the inauthentic desires. You can, when you really slow down, you'll start to feel how all the inauthentic desires are grasping, pulling, clinging, clawing. The authentic desires don't have that quality to them. They're more open, they're more patient. There's a sense of this is true, so I don't need to chase after it. I don't need to have anxiety about it. I can have patience with it. Doesn't mean I'm always going to be passive. It doesn't mean that there might not be a time for rapid action. But in general, the sense is that there's sort of a timeless quality to it. So I don't need to be so worried. And so just slowing down is key. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, sometimes it can be challenging. This is what I've noticed. It can be challenging to differentiate between or to recognize an authentic desire in the when it's masked by an avoidance or repulsion. So there are many things that we tend to be oriented toward what we don't want, trying to avoid or reject what we don't want. And as I've pointed out many times, what we give our attention to, that's where our energy goes. Where our energy goes, that feeds that thing, so it grows. So if our attention is going to what we don't want, then we're feeding what we don't want, so what we don't want grows. And the more it grows, the more that seems like we have to continue to indulge that vicious cycle, because it seems as if we don't continue to indulge it by resisting what we don't want or trying to avoid what we don't want. That would mean that we would be accepting or allowing what we don't want. But when you just slow down, then you can start to see with more clarity the situation as it is. And it might not be a comfortable one, but you can at least see it clearly, which is here's a vicious cycle. The more that I resist or avoid, the more that I'm feeding this thing, so it grows and grows and grows and grows. And that means then I feel a stronger compulsion to resist or avoid, which feeds it more, so it grows and grows, and even stronger compulsion. So clearly this is not a good situation, so I need to have a different relationship. So so in this world, this manifest world, everything exists in contrast. So you can only recognize something because there's a polar opposite to it. If there was no contrast, then nothing would exist as such. So there would be no day if there was no night, because there would be nothing to define it. So it has to have something that it is not in order to define it so that it can be something. So everything exists in contrast to its opposite, its polar opposite. So everything exists in these polarities within the manifest realm. And so what we want and what we don't want always exist together. You can't really separate them. You want something because what you don't want exists in opposition to it. There's a contrast. That's how you know you want it. And what you don't want exists in contrast to what you do want. So if we continue to feed what we don't want, then that pole grows, and the other pole of what we do want diminishes. What we actually want, though, is to flip that. We want to give our attention to what we do want, and thereby what we don't want will diminish as what we do want will increase. So when we recognize that there's something that we don't want that we're giving a lot of attention to, then this is a really powerful opportunity to identify clearly what we do want, an authentic desire, presumably, and then to begin to work with it intelligently. So this is another useful step, is just to see that what you don't want exists in contrast to what you do want. If you give your attention to what you don't want, you're not giving your attention to what you do want, which means that what you don't want grows and what you do want atrophies. But clearly that's not what you want. And so recognizing that, just again, slowing down. So if we're sped up, then it seems like there's no possibility of doing anything differently. You just have to keep doing the same thing because there's momentum there. So you can't introduce any possibility of newness. You just have to follow the momentum if you just keep going fast. But if you slow down, then there might be, again, still the uncomfortable feelings and all that stuff might still be there, but at least there's now a possibility of choosing differently. And with this, if you accept that, then you can begin to look at, okay, I can identify what I don't want. So I don't want, let's choose an example of a specific example to work with. Okay, so say I don't want this person to treat me this way. So you have some relationship with somebody and your idea is that this person treats you habitually in a particular way and you don't like that. So you have resistance to that. And you've probably noticed the more you resist, the more that you get of that. So the temptation is to continue to resist because you say it's so bad. I have to resist. And it sets it up, this false kind of idea that I have to resist because the only alternative is that if I stop resisting, then I'll be assaulted by this thing that I'm otherwise keeping at bay by way of my resistance. But there's an alternative that we haven't usually considered, which is how about instead of giving energy and attention to this, which is what I don't want, just for a moment, I mean, at least in a moment of safety, right? In a moment you say, okay, right now, maybe you're not around that person. So whatever the behavior is that you find so troublesome, that's not happening right now. So in this moment, you don't need to give your attention to what you don't want, even though you're probably in the habit of it. So in this moment of safety, you could choose to identify what is it that you do want that is in contrast to what you don't want. So I don't want this person to treat me this way. What is it I do want? I want a feeling of, I want a good feeling. I want a feeling of safety, a feeling of love, a feeling of abundance, a feeling of happiness. I want a feeling of being respected, cared for. Okay, so that's what you want. So you can begin, if you choose, you can begin because you can identify that that's an authentic desire, probably, presumably. You you authentically desire that. So you could start to give your attention to that. So when you've identified authentic desires, or I preferably authentic desires, but I guess we could say any desire that you would like to work with, any desire that you would like to actually see more fulfillment of in your life, more expression of in your life, then how can you do that? So the idea, again, or the principle is that what you give your attention to, there the energy goes, that grows whatever it is. So if you're giving your energy to what you don't want, that the energy goes to that and it grows. If you give your energy to what you do want, that grows. So you want to give your attention to what you do want. So remember, I'm trying to simplify. So hopefully you can see the simplicity of it. None of this is intended to be complicated. It's a lot of words, I understand, but it's really, I'm trying to express something very simple and natural. So but very powerful. So what you hopefully it makes sense that you want what you want. And this goes without saying, but it's worth pointing out because in this seemingly complicated world, we need to state the simple and obvious things that you want what you want. So that's what you actually want to focus on. Because when you focus on what you want, when you give your attention to what you want, then you get what you want. It grows, it's manifest, it's expressed, it's realized. But you're probably in the habit of giving your attention to what you don't want, or giving your attention to, well, also what you don't want, but what you think you want, but it's not actually what you want. All of the kind of stuff that I mentioned before, all the things that have been borrowed or advertised, things that are not actually emanating from yourself. So if we give our attention to what we don't want, we'll get what we don't want, but we won't experience the fulfillment because we won't be getting what we want. Again, it's very obvious, but I'm just pointing it out because it's helpful to point out the obvious things that we're not noticing. So when you see that this is going on in your life, and I'm inviting you to just notice that you almost certainly, because it's how we are all programmed to behave and think and perceive, you'll probably notice that you are in the habit of giving your attention to what you don't want. And then you get more of what you don't want. So when you recognize that, then see the fairly straightforward process, which is you want to identify what you do want, and then give your attention to that. So it's actually exactly the same process that you use in a negative way, but you want to start to use it in a positive way. So you can start to see how you use it in a negative way. You fantasize and uh, go over these things so many times in your imagination, right? You think about the things that you don't want. You worry, you uh, chew it over, you you get yourself all worked up about the thing you fear. So you see how you do it. There's a process, and you're using your imagination. You're thinking and imagining. So feeling, thinking, imagining, thinking, feeling, imagining, thinking, feeling, imagining. So you're just using these basic faculties that you have to, we could say, produce an inner state, and you become very practiced at that inner state. And so you become skilled at that inner state. Now, that inner state is what gives rise to your so-called outer experience. So the inner and the outer are intimately linked. They're, we could say, reflections of one another. You can't separate them. And so whatever you are practiced at producing inwardly, that you will experience outwardly. But if you're practicing what you don't want, then you get what you don't want expressed outwardly, reflected to you. And then the vicious cycle is that then feeds back. So you practice more of what you don't want, and then you get more of what you don't want expressed on the outside. But we can use exactly the same process, just shift to giving our attention to what we do want. So now you identify what you do want, and then you just give your attention to it. Think, feel, imagine. So you just think, feel, and imagine what you do want. So I do want, using the same example of, I start with what I don't want. I'm having some challenge in this particular relationship. There's a dynamic in the relationship where I feel bad. I feel disrespected, unloved. I'm in the habit of getting my attention to that, thinking about it, feeling it, imagining it. So I get more of that. And then I think about it, feel it, and imagine it more, and I get more of it. Even if at some point I say enough and I cut that person out of my life, if I'm still thinking, feeling, and imagining it, and guess what? It's going to still show up in my life. Not maybe through that person, but through other people. Because of this principle, again, that there's an intimate link, a mirror reflection of the inner and the outer. So the state that I'm creating inwardly will be reflected to me outwardly. So I wake up and I realize, I slow down and I see, wow, yeah, it's true. I'm thinking, feeling, and imagining this. And sure enough, I just keep experiencing it outwardly in my life. It's just keeps being reflected to me. And I don't like that. So I'm going to pause and slow down even more. I'm going to just give my attention to, what is it that I do want? I want to feel loved and respected. Okay. So now I'm going to think, feel, and imagine that I'm loved and respected. Well, because I'm not very practiced at it, maybe that might be challenging at first, but that makes sense, right? Because anything that you're not practiced at, it's maybe more challenging at first. If you have never ridden a bicycle, then it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to be riding a bicycle in a professional race from day one. If you have that expectation, you'll be disappointed. But you can always start where you are. And if you just consistently, persistently apply yourself to it, and you just are willing to be patient with yourself in the process and understand how this is all working, it's organic, it's natural, there's this growth that occurs by persistently, consistently giving my attention to this thing, it will grow. So knowing that, I just continue day after day. I just give my attention to that. Every time I notice that my attention is going over here to what I don't want, I'll use that as a reminder, shift it to what I do want. Oh, here I am, I'm practicing again what I don't want. I'm practicing, oh, I'm disrespected, I'm unloved. Can't believe they do that thing to me. And then I'm just, oh, wait, I don't like that. What is it I do want? Oh, I'm loved and respected. So I just start to give my attention to that and feel, okay, I'm loved and respected. So I can think I'm loved and respected. I can visualize I'm loved and respected. What does that look like? I can feel I'm loved and respected. So I'm using these faculties to begin to feed into this virtuous cycle of what I do want. I'm loved and respected. I feel loved and respected. I imagine myself loved and respected. I'm thinking of myself as loved and respected. So that's the basic process. Now, there are going to be certain um, obstacles that are in place that produce resistance to that, because it's like when water has been flowing in a particular way for tens of millions of years, for example, then it's carved out a path. And so you say, I want the water to go this other way. The tendency is that the water is going to just keep going the way that it's gone, because there will be resistance to it going this other way, because the land has built up in a certain way so that the water doesn't want to go that way. It wants to go this other way because that's the habit. So in a similar kind of way, I'm wanting to redirect, I'm wanting to change my inner landscape, which will reshape my outer landscape. And there will be certain resistances. Now, the good news is that the inner landscape and thereby the outer landscape is highly malleable. And so um, the, the change can take place relatively rapidly, but we have to recognize and work intelligently with the resistances there if we want to see that adaptation happen quickly. So the one way to recognize that resistance, the way that the landscape has built up in resistance to move the energy moving in a different direction, is that there will be certain beliefs there. And so those beliefs block the energy flowing that way. So you can be trying to give your attention to this, say, I'm trying to think and feel and imagine myself loved and respected, but there's certain blockages. And if you just slow down even more and just notice, just observe, you'll see there's certain beliefs that will pop up, probably in the form of a thought that's felt. And you just have to be watchful for it, and you'll see, oh yeah, here it is. I believe I can't. I believe that's impossible. I'm unlovable. There's something wrong with me. And there might be all kinds of supportive evidence, all the things that I've done that are wrong, how I'm fundamentally unlovable. I remember that look that my mother gave me when I was 3 years old, and that just sealed the deal for me. I'm definitely unlovable. Nobody could ever love me. And there's the things that I did that verify, prove that I'm unlovable, because those are unlovable sorts of things. Those are just terrible things, and they're unforgivable. And so there's a belief there. Now, if I just want to keep that belief there, I'm really going to have a hard time redirecting the energy, because every time I try to visualize, give my energy and attention to what I do want, it's blocked by this belief that says, sorry, I can't do that because you're unlovable. I'm trying to imagine myself, visualize myself as lovable, feel myself lovable, and it's just blocked. Oh, no. Oh, not lovable. So I recognize the belief that's there, and then I need to dissolve it. And how can I dissolve it? Through the most powerful solvent there is, which is just awareness. So when you're aware, you're aware of an authentic desire. So that authentic desire already is weighted. WEIGHTED, weighted. So it has weight to it. There's all other things being equal, things will tend to go in this direction. Why? Because it's weighted. There's an authentic desire that says this way. But all things are not equal because there's a belief that blocks it. belief that says I'm unlovable. There's a desire that says I'm loved. But there's a belief that says, sorry, can't go this way because you're unlovable. So well, I want to clear away what it is, the obstacles through this by 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 way of awareness. So the awareness is just noticing, okay, there's that belief. Notice how the belief is supported and propped up. Well, oh, there's that tension, gripping, holding the breath, whatever it is. There's, I'm imagining these things, all the things that support this belief that I'm unlovable. Again, the look on my mother's face from 3 years old, the things that I did that prove that I'm unlovable, etc. So I just start to see, okay, that's what it's made out of. But I can dissolve it through this power of awareness just by seeing what it actually is. It's not this monolith, actually. I stop because I perceive it as a monolith. Here it comes up. Oh, there's this monolith of I'm unlovable, can't move that way. So it keeps, as long as it seems like it's this real thing, then there's no way I can go that way. I'm stopped every time. But if I just use this power of open awareness and just see, what is it really? Is it really a monolith? Actually, no, it's this, there's a thought there, there's images there are feelings there. And if I just slow down even more, I can just see, oh, it's not even all that tightly bound. It's not even really a thing. It's just sort of loosely held together, and this power of awareness just starts to dissolve it. So I just start to notice, oh, that feeling, when the feeling isn't so perceived as being so tightly bound to the thought and the images, then the feeling kind of starts to dissipate a little bit. And when the images aren't so tightly bound to the feeling and the thought, then the images start to dissipate a little bit, and etc. So it all just starts to get teased apart just through the power of awareness. So you don't have to fight against it. You don't have to do anything other than just slow down and just be aware of it and just recognize, again, come back to what is it that you want? I mean, if you fight for this belief, then you're going to maintain it. But if you keep recognizing the truth of what is it I really desire, do I desire to be unlovable, or do I desire to know myself as lovable? What's more true? And if you keep recognizing the real truth is I desire to know myself as lovable, then I'm going to dissolve this false belief. So I'm just going to patiently look at it, let it be dissolved, and then this energy can flow there so that I can oh, there we go. Now I can start to actually open to feeling myself more and more as lovable. So that's the basic process. So I hope that I've succeeded in what I endeavored to do here, which is to try and really just get it to the basics. What is in this life? What am I wanting? What am I trying to do here? Why do I exist? What is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose of my existence? There's a desire. That desire is to be myself at all levels. So how can I do that? By, first of all, identifying who am I? In other words, what are my authentic desires? And I can recognize my authentic desires in part by recognizing what are my inauthentic desires. So if I recognize what I don't want, then I can see what it is that I do want. And then I can notice that whatever I give my attention to, that grows. So I want to stop giving my attention to what I don't want. I want to redirect it to what I do want. I can do that using the same exact basic process that I use to give attention and grow what I don't want, which is that I just put my attention there and I think, feel, and imagine that. So I use that in a negative way to think, feel, and imagine what I don't want, and I get more of that. Now I want to, every time I notice that I'm doing that, I want to redirect to what I do want, and I want to think, feel, and imagine what I do want. At first, I will not have particular skill in that because I haven't practiced. But the more I practice, the more skillful I will become at it. It will grow. What I don't want will atrophy. So it will be less tempting for me to give my attention to that. And it'll be easier and easier for me to give my attention to what I do want. But at first, I have to just be conscious and persist, slow down, make that shift consciously, think, feel, imagine what I do want. And as I do that, I'll notice that there are blockages. Those blockages are beliefs. And I can dissolve those beliefs through the power of awareness. Just slow down even more and notice, what are the beliefs actually made out of? I don't have to fight with them. I don't have to go through elaborate processes. I don't have to do anything other than just breathe, relax, and just notice, what is this belief actually? And you'll see it's just consists of thoughts, feelings, and images. It's not a monolith. So you can let the thoughts, feelings, and images start to get teased apart. And so it becomes more and more transparent, and it will be helpful in the process to just keep coming back to noticing and telling the truth about what you truly want. Using the example again that I used, what I'm recognizing is that my authentic desire is to recognize that I'm loved, and I have a belief that's blocking my expression of that, that says I'm unlovable, then I just want to keep coming back to and noticing, what is it that I really want? Because I'm in the habit of indulging this belief that I'm unlovable, as if that's what I wanted. But when I slow down and tell the truth about what I do want, I recognize, well, actually, what I want is to know that I'm loved. I might be afraid that I can't achieve that. I might have all kinds of resistance to it, but that's actually the authentic truth. That's what will give soul satisfaction, is to know myself as truly lovable. So then, no matter how well developed the habit of that belief might be, in the face of this recognition that what I truly want is to know myself as lovable, then this belief has to be dissolved. So I'll be patient and persistent in just dissolving that belief through awareness. And I don't have to fight and struggle, because if I fight and struggle, it gives more energy to that thing. It's like the oobleck, which some of you will remember, it's that corn, the starch and water mixture. And if you hit it really hard, there's resistance. But if you very slowly press into it, then the resistance is much less. And same kind of thing with these beliefs. Don't fight against them. Just with awareness, let them dissolve. Just see they don't have any power. The true power comes from you, from not from your mind or your personality or your idea of yourself, but your actual true self, who you really are, and the same self that these authentic desires emanate from. So just gently, patiently, persistently direct that power to the fulfillment of the authentic desires, and you will achieve what you really want. Very simple, I think. That was my intention. That's it for today. For those who are here live, happy to stay on for Q&A if you have anything. But I'm going to end this recording now.